Welcome to the Thursday edition of the Spark Creativity Teacher Podcast, a podcast for English teachers in search of creative teaching strategies. Whether you're new to the show or a longtime listener, I'm so glad you're here for today's edition of Highly Recommended. Today, let's talk about March Madness and how to harness all that awesome enthusiasm to get your students excited about poetry. So last year, I worked with Melissa Alter-Smith from the Teach Living Poets site to create a March Madness bracket for the Lighthouse, and I learned so much from her in the process. A March Madness poetry bracket is a super fun and easy way to bring more voices into your curriculum and help kids see a lot of different sides of poetry. So let's talk about how to set it up. You can set up your poetry bracket on your whiteboard or on a Google slide, and you're just going to fill in the little slots in the tournament bracket with poetry that you love. Now, is there any specific mix that's required? Absolutely not. You can mix together classic poetry, performance poetry from places like the Button classroom-friendly YouTube channel, readings by contemporary authors that you find online, favorites from the show Def Poetry Jam, readings that you do yourself from books of poetry that you have, any kind of poetry that you think would appeal to your students, or even poetry that you think would really spark a reaction from them. I have one performance piece called Love by Alexandra Oliver that I love playing in class because some students absolutely hate it and they find her performance style so off-putting, and other people think it is absolutely hilarious. And so that is one I would definitely put on a bracket because I think it would just lead to such great conversations, and it always has for me in class. You can get fancy and have poems face off initially in the bracket that cover similar themes or have a similar feel to them, or you can just kind of randomly scatter in poems and see what happens. I loved an idea that was shared in our Lighthouse community earlier this week about having a living poet side of the bracket and having a dead poet side of the bracket. But you can really organize it however you want. All you need to carry this through is to take a few minutes a day to either read aloud or play the poems of the day in the classes that participate in your tournament. So maybe you want to share this with all of your classes, or maybe it's going to be a ninth grade thing or an AP Lit thing. In those classes, take those first couple minutes of class or maybe the last couple minutes of class to play the poems, and then you can keep it simple and just have your students close their eyes and raise their hands to vote. Or if you have time, you can build some writing and argument into it by either letting kids talk about the poems a little bit in pairs or small groups or as a class, or just be filling something out on paper where they rate the poems and defend their scores. Either way, whether you keep it simple with a vote or you let students kind of give written feedback and rank the poems, you're going to want to keep track of those votes so that at the end of the day, you can move your winners forward. Now, you could definitely get student help with this. It's just a matter of sort of adding up your votes and seeing who won, which poem was the best for that day. Hopefully, that won't take you too long. Now, if you'd like to get started with this, but you're not sure where to get started with this, I'm going to recommend taking a look at the poets Harry Baker, Amanda Gorman, and Sarah Kay for a start. Those are three performance poets that I have seen some incredible work from, so if you're not sure where to start, that's a good place to start. I also want to tell you that Melissa has created a wonderful free version of this on her site, Teach Living Poets, where the poems are already filled in. So you can go through and kind of check and make sure you're comfortable with those poems, or you can use it as a starting point and sub in a few of your favorites and then use some of Melissa's favorites. Or if you're in the Lighthouse, she and I worked on one together, which is in the Teach Living Poets section. So there are a lot of places where you can get help to get started if this is new for you. You can build from scratch. You can use Melissa's. If you're in the Lighthouse, you can use the one we made together. A March Madness poetry bracket is such an easy way to integrate more poetry from many voices into your curriculum. And of course, get more student buy-in for that poetry. That's why this week I want to highly recommend you give it a try.